My racist college professor framed me for plagiarism, so I fought back by marrying his daughter in Vegas. I used to be your very stereotypical slightly nerdy, slightly skinny Indian dude before this professor transformed my life with his close-mindedness. Basically, I was originally in college to be a math major with a long-term goal of being a professor. However, the guy who taught Intro to Linear Algebra, Professor Hanover, seemed to have a personal vendetta against me. He exclusively called me Brownie, randomly called on me to answer difficult questions, and often used me as an example of what not to be for the students. I asked my friends about it, and apparently it was common knowledge that Professor Hanover just didn't like brown or black students. What I never expected, though, was for Professor Hanover to mess with my final exam. Basically, it was your stereotypical exam where the last problem was an in-depth word problem that required explanations. I'm usually crap at these problems, but when I saw problem number 8, I somehow connected it to a larger physics concept that I understood really well. I even doodled a diagram of the physics thing in the top right. However, when we got our exam papers back, I received no grade and was just informed that I had to see Professor Hanover after class. Imagine my shock when he showed me the final page of my exam, a photocopy of the final exam for a student next to me, who was basically at the top of the class, and a word-for-word match in our answers to section C of problem 8. I was shocked because I knew I didn't cheat, but the other person sat ahead and to the right of me, so there's no feasible way they could have cheated. My professor then told me that he had already informed the university of my cheating and plagiarism, that my parents were being contacted at that moment, and that I would soon have to meet with our academic integrity committee, which is notorious for declaring kids expelled within the first 10 minutes of a hearing. I was terrified and stunned, but I knew I had nothing to prove my innocence other than my word, which was up against this tenured professor's. The next week pretty much changed my life. My parents called me and screamed at me, threatening to disown me for cheating because that wasn't how I was raised. I was shunned from my peers, and I had to prepare a flimsy case to the Academic Integrity Committee. When I took a closer look at the question that I'd responded to and realized that the response which my professor claimed I had cheated on and copied didn't make sense to me. Because I had approached the entire problem from an applications angle, focusing on the geometric physics of it, but this particular response was much more theoretical and, frankly, above my understanding. I looked over my response over and over again until I became certain that the plagiarized answer definitely couldn't have been mine. I didn't write like that, all my other answers had a different approach to the problem, and it didn't sound like me at all. And it was an incredibly flimsy argument when I presented it to the Academic Integrity Board, until I was fortunate enough to realize that although the handwriting on the exam was slightly different, the O's in question 8C looked like they started and ended at the top center, whereas the O's in all the other parts of question 8 and in the rest of my final started and ended at the bottom center. In short, I was basically accusing my professor of changing my answer and rewriting it to look like mine, and 3 of the people on the board laughed at me when I pointed it out, but one of them, who was an actual physicist, seemed to at least understand my argument that I had used an applications-based explanation for 8A, 8B, and 8D, whereas 8C randomly became much more theoretical. They apparently had also found a meeting log of my report with my academic advisor where I had complained about discriminatory treatment from Professor Hanover, and that, coupled with the other evidence I presented, was enough to change their minds about expelling me. So, instead of kicking me out of college, they just gave me 0 points for all of problem 8, but my average was still high enough for me to pass the class, but at this point, I was mad. I had a very firm suspicion that Professor Hanover had intentionally framed me for cheating, and I wanted revenge, so I decided to play it for the long con, and I hit up his daughter Haley on Snapchat. Now, Haley is a biochem major and she has pretty much no normal connection to me, but I guess she found me cute, because we started talking. We connected pretty well, and we decided to meet at a party, where things got hot and heavy between us, and it was then that I saw my opportunity. I was going to date Professor Hanover's daughter, sincerely, just to see the look on his face when she introduced us at Thanksgiving. And so I doubled down on my attempts to woo Haley, but it was pretty easy because we were genuinely so compatible. I think I would have fallen in love with her regardless of Professor Hanover, to be honest, and I even ended up telling her the whole story about him reporting me for cheating, me being pretty sure that he had framed me, and him basically ruining my family life with my parents forever because of that. Haley was super sympathetic and straight up confessed that her dad was racist, and it felt reassuring to finally have that confirmation and validation. This was around 5 months into our relationship. And since Haley knew the truth about the bad blood between me and her father, she helped me avoid him at all costs and only mentioned me as the boyfriend and never by name, but everything changed one drunken night. As you might have gleaned from the title, we got way too wasted, sauntered up to the Marriage License Bureau in Las Vegas right before they closed at midnight, and tied the knot. Obviously, we woke up the next morning and immediately started making plans for annulment, but then Haley looked at me and went, "What if we didn't, though?" I think her saying that was when I really knew that I loved her, because it was obvious that the only reason she said this was to see how we could piss off her dad even more. Anyway, she just texted him that she got married with a picture of our hands interlaced, and I'll be meeting him tomorrow night. I cannot wait to see the look on his face when he realizes that he brought this misfortune entirely onto his own shoulders. I've been married for 16 years, and I just realized that I'm in love with another woman, my sister-in-law. My wife Rosianne is the most wonderful woman on the planet. She is kind, loving, affectionate, and objectively wholesome in every way. She is the perfect, loving housewife, and although we have no children, there is absolutely nothing I can objectively complain about in our relationship, and the effect is that, when I'm with Rosianne, all I feel is boredom. I realized 2 years ago that I started to look forward to when Rosianne's sister Greta would visit, because Greta is the opposite of Rosianne. Greta is loud. Greta is stubborn. Greta points out my many flaws and refuses to compromise for them, and when I'm with her, I just feel alive. Everything came to a head 3 weeks ago when Greta started staying over at our house because of construction in her condo. At this point, I still didn't know I was in love with her, to be fair. Although I enjoyed Greta's company, I had convinced myself I loved Rosian, but one night, we brought out some drinks and all of us got carried away. My wife can't handle liquor well, so I put her to sleep pretty quickly, but I chose to go back to the living room with Greta. And, well, we kissed. The worst part is that it was the single best moment of my life. It felt like a movie, it was slow and fast in all the right ways, and we barely went at it for 30 seconds before we both pulled apart, suddenly sober. Here's the thing, Greta whispered "I think I love you" to me right before we kissed, and that was what made me realize I feel the same way. But when I went to speak to her about it the next day after all hangovers had been cured, she refused to entertain me. She's left our home, is staying at a hotel, with my wife none the wiser, but I cannot continue living like this. I care deeply for Rosian, and I desperately don't want to hurt her, but being apart from Greta like this when I know she wants me hurts so much more. What should I do? How can I get Greta to come back? Should I come clean to Rosian without talking to Greta first? Or should I just accept that I'll be separated from the love of my life for the rest of this marriage, and the rest of my life?
My brother-in-law called me the one who got away in his speech, and my husband is very hurt and it is all my fault. I don't know what to do. I think I have done serious damage to my marriage before it even began. I met my husband through his brother, Chris, who I had a big crush on in college. I never was clingy or never acted on my feelings, and I never really allowed myself to get too close to him because I knew that he didn't like me back. However, Chris knew I had a crush on him. He would always say that I was girlfriend material and how he wouldn't want to lead me on. He wanted to have fun before that. He would say this to others, but even once to me. On 2 occasions he would text me that he had feelings for me only to apologize later and retract his words. But on Christmas 4 years ago he texted me that he was in love with me and wanted to take me out on a date. He said he was done playing around and wanted a relationship. He was invited to the New Year's Eve party that my roommate at the time had. He told me he wanted to talk to me then. When he came to the party he had his brother with him. Chris spent the party going out of his way to ignore me, and later I saw him making out with my roommate and they spent the night in her room. I decided there and then that I will drop it. Enough is enough. Next morning he told me that he messed up big time and he apologized. During the party I got to know his brother, who was the opposite of Chris. He was shy and hated attention, and he was just the best. Soon after, Chris's brother asked me on a date. We are married now. Our wedding was last Wednesday. I want to make two things clear. I never went beyond a crush on Chris, and only after I fell for my husband that I understood what love is. He is everything to me and I love him more than anything. I never told anyone about my crush, and when I met my husband I didn't tell him either. Chris wasn't happy I was seeing his brother, and he's been cold towards me since. Even when it got serious between my husband and I, Chris held a speech on our rehearsal dinner and he basically outed everything and ended it with how he regretted not asking me out sooner and how he will always regret it. It was very awkward afterwards and nobody talked. On our wedding day my husband did everything to act normal and he made sure everything was as planned, but I could feel that he was hurt and angry. After the party he asked me if I loved Chris and if I dated him for that reason. I started crying because it's absolutely not true. We started dating and became friends, and I made sure it was him I wanted before committing, and I never loved anyone like I love my husband. I told him all this and more, and I apologized so much for not telling him everything. In the beginning I thought it was my own private matter and I didn't feel the need to discuss it with a then stranger to me. When our relationship evolved I just never thought Chris was relevant and my crush seemed a silly thing. Now it's back to bite me in the butt. My husband is very sad and he barely talks to me. We're leaving for our honeymoon in 2 weeks. He barely speaks about it. The thing we both waited for with so much anticipation and longing. I don't know what to do. I can't turn back time, so I don't know what to do.
What's one dark psychology trick that everyone would benefit from knowing? Everyone knows about the power of silence, but most people don't understand where to use silence to shift power in your favor. I'm a psychologist, and largely, there are 3 circumstances where silence can be used most efficiently. When someone is subtly accusing you of something, when you want to get someone else to speak, and when you want to insult someone. The first scenario comes up more often than you would expect. American society especially teaches people to dance around confrontation, which means that most accusations are buried under hypotheticals and observations. If I want to ask you why you were being dishonest with me, societal norms would find it more appropriate for me to comment, "It's kind of weird that you said that earlier, because I feel like you ended up doing the opposite." Rather than directly saying, "You lied to me." Why? In your scenario, the most effective way to deal with this kind of observational accusation is a quiet hum and silence. Do not engage, do not react. What this does is it dismantles the person accusing you by making their comment seem out of place, especially in comparison with your nonchalant reaction. Since the confrontation was indirect instead of direct, it creates the effect of them making their attempt at confrontation too subtle, leaving them responsible for just an awkward silence. This is important because in any conversation, there is a special weight placed on the person who speaks last. The longer you are silent, the more out of place their comment will seem, especially if it held an implicit question. Because of this subtle weight that burdens the last person who speaks, people will often try to counter that weight by adding on to their previous comment, which is why, if you ever want someone to add on to their previous comment and talk more, the best thing to do is to remain quiet. They will feel the pressure and automatically add something on their own. And the less you react to a person, the quieter you remain, and the longer you stretch any silence, the more you undermine someone. Ignoring a person is the best insult because it tells them that they aren't even worth recognition. They're that far beneath you. Am I the a-hole for letting maggots stay in a homeless man's leg as an EMT? On my first day as a cadet, my EMT squad was dispatched to pick up a person with leg pain and transport them to the nearest hospital. The first sign that something was awry was the fact that the dispatch location was at an intersection rather than a proper address. The second sign was that, when we got to the intersection, the entire area was dead empty except for one homeless man, despite it being a pretty busy traffic stop. The third sign, as well as the point where I realized that something was truly wrong, was the terrible smell that hit my squad the second we stepped outside. It smelled like a sewer, but worse, like there were dead animals or something. Anyway, we stepped out to confirm that the homeless guy was our patient, and I started taking the blankets that were wrapped around his lower body so I could get a better look at this leg pain. The thing is, those blankets were drenched. This was nighttime, so I couldn't actually tell what the substance was, but I realized afterwards that it was blood. However, by the third or fourth blanket, I realized that the blankets were covered in maggots. At first, I thought it was just a result of poor hygiene. After I pulled the final blanket off, though, I realized that the maggots weren't coming from the blankets or anything, they were all sourced from this homeless guy's leg. His leg was so rotten it was black, and maggots were moving in and out of the rotted muscle. It was a struggle not to throw up, and the second we realized the extent of this leg pain, my squad returned to the ambulance to switch to our hyper-protective gear. When we lifted him onto the stretcher, maggots were dropping onto the ground like candy out of a kid's pocket. We had to call the local hospital ahead of time to inform them that they had an incoming patient that was a health hazard. The hospital told us to take him straight to decontamination instead of the main wing. So we brought them there. The men who accepted this homeless guy from us were wearing full hazmat suits. It's obvious that everyone understood how severe this guy's condition was. However, his condition isn't medically defined as urgent because it isn't causing immediate death, isn't harming his respiratory system, and the pain isn't excruciating. Therefore, the hospital isn't obligated to operate on him. After we got the drop-off signature from the hospital, I stayed back briefly to find out what would happen to him. The nurses informed me that he would basically be cleaned and then dropped back off onto the streets. They couldn't do surgery on him because he couldn't pay for anything. The worst part is that maggots lay eggs, so even if they managed to get the living maggots out of the dude's leg, those bugs would be back in days unless the entire rotten limb was amputated. When I went home, I told my parents about the condition and asked them if there was any way we could sponsor his surgery because I didn't think a guy should have to live that way. I guess my parents were hesitant because it was my first ever EMT shift, and they didn't want this to be a precedent because we couldn't afford to keep paying for poor people to have surgeries and I'd certainly get more homeless patients, but it was still a terrible shock. I'm torn up over this, and I've been wondering if I should use my savings to try to offer the guy surgery. He's called back almost every week, always citing leg pain, but there's nothing I can do other than transport the guy. Should I use my savings to pay for his surgery? What if he doesn't want it? Is there a right thing to do, at all, in this situation? What do you think?
My nail technician dead named me, so I ran her out of business. I've been seeing a lady named Anna to do my nails for the past year or so, and things have always been smooth sailing with her. She's always on time, executes her designs well, operates out of her home and has a TV that I can watch Netflix on while she works, and she's always acted like the gentlest woman in the world. The only catch is that Anna speaks Spanish and mostly broken English, so we've never really communicated with each other all that well. Still, between the snacks I would bring her and the happy claps she'd give me whenever I asked her for a design that she really loved, I thought we had a bond of some sorts. I guess I was wrong. 2 weeks ago, I went in to get my acrylic set refilled, and Anna's sister was there. Anna's sister spoke both English and Spanish, so the three of us were able to hold a pretty steady conversation. At one point, though, Anna's sister asked me why I was doing my nails, since I was a man and all. My jaw dropped, given that I've had several surgeries and it's pretty hard to tell that I'm a man, but also at the blatant audacity. You cannot look at me and see anything but a person who is working very hard to present as female, so although I knew in my heart that Anna's sister was being intentionally transphobic, I just laughed along and explained that I didn't conform to my biological gender. Imagine my shock when Anna laughed at me. And Anna, who had not spoken 2 words of English in the whole conversation, just pointed and said, "You nails not make you woman. You man." And she and her sister continued a new conversation as if nothing had happened at all. I was floored, and there were tears in my eyes when I left. For some ridiculous reason, I still tipped her, so I don't think Anna thought anything was wrong, but when I got home, I knew I was going to get my revenge. I just felt so betrayed and pained. So, I called all my trans friends, people who I knew would share in my hurt, and told them the plan. Then, for the next month, we review bombed Anna for being unprofessional, unclean, and a dead-naming brat. We pointed out that she operated out of her home instead of a salon, posted actual pictures of my nails from the few times she had messed up in the past, and basically tanked her ratings to 1 star until, finally, the business was marked online as closed. Now, I've been told that Anna has started a new nail business under a different name, and I'm still trying to figure out whether I should hit her with a round 2 and review bomb her all over again. Should I do it or not? What do you guys think? Mother-in-law publicly called me fat, so I walked out of my own baby shower. My mother-in-law always comments on my weight, especially since I got pregnant. Lately, she's been making more comments and kinda shaming me for what I eat. When I visit, she serves me smaller portions and even buys me smaller-sized clothes, even though I'm in my 2nd trimester and they don't fit. Still, despite this tension between our families, my sister-in-law decided to throw me a baby shower. All my in-laws were invited. At the baby shower, my mother-in-law was in charge of serving food. But all that was there were cakes and juice. I got hungry from all the talking, so I reached for a piece of cake, and she grabbed my arm. She said I'd gained enough weight already and that her son wouldn't be happy living with a large walrus. I was so shocked she said that out loud. She acted like she was sorry, but it was obvious she wasn't. So, I put the cake down, grabbed my stuff, and left. My sister-in-law stopped me, saying I can't leave and embarrass her like that. But I told her to ask her mom to leave if she wanted me to stay. She got mad and said she couldn't do that to her own mother. So, I just left and called my mom to pick me up and went home. When my husband got home, he was really angry. He asked me what I did at the baby shower and why I did it. I told him about what his mom did, and he started yelling, saying I messed everything up over something small. But I told him it wasn't a small deal to me because her comments were really starting to wear into me, and I didn't want to make her think that it would be okay to treat me like this for the rest of my life. My husband just said his mom meant well and that I needed to stop being so easily offended. He wants me to call and apologize, but I'm starting to get really hesitant, and I don't know who's right anymore. Did I really go too far with his mom? Should I apologize? Or do I have the right to demand an apology from her for treating me so callously?
Make fun of my deceased mother? Have fun finding a place to sleep, mother-in-law. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and my mother-in-law can be pretty demanding. She likes things her way and doesn't always like me because I stood up to her rude comments. My wife usually defends her mom, but I try not to let it bother me too much because they've been through a lot together. To be fair, I've had a similar experience with my mother, so I know the feeling of putting family above all else. Now, for reference, I'm a transgender male, and my mother-in-law wasn't thrilled about her daughter dating a trans guy like me. But she said she'd deal with it, even though she made some snarky comments along the way. 2 days ago, my wife hosted a big family dinner, and things were going well until my mother-in-law started talking about wanting grandchildren. Biological grandchildren, specifically. That B word made sure to drop the other B word. Anyway, everybody knew my wife and I couldn't have kids biologically, but my mother-in-law kept going on about it during the whole dinner. I usually don't care about her comments, but this time she hit a nerve because she said that she wanted biological children because she didn't want to be like other mothers who adopted children that would grow up with mental illnesses. This was an obvious stab at me because I was adopted and ended up being transgender, but my mother passed away quite recently and hearing my mother-in-law act like my mom made a poor decision by raising me was too much. I couldn't stand her disrespecting my mom like that, so I told her, quite plainly, to leave my house. I said that I didn't need someone like her under my roof, and I didn't care how late it was but she could try her best to find shelter on her own for the night. My mother-in-law got emotional and made a scene, but eventually, she left. The dinner ended there, and after everyone left, my wife got really mad at me for the way I treated her mother. I tried explaining why I reacted that way, but she insisted I apologize to her mom. I refused, and now my wife won't talk to me. So, here's my question. Do you think I was wrong in this situation? Should I apologize to my mother-in-law? What do you think?
This is how Genshin Impact saved my marriage. My husband is a total gamer. He used to be obsessed with League of Legends, to the point where he would play it the second he got home from work. To be fair, he still did the household tasks that we had each assigned each other. He took out the trash, did the laundry, and vacuumed our whole apartment whenever his gaming sessions were done. However, whatever time used to be spent for intimacy between the two of us turned into League of Legends time. For around 6 months, I probably spoke to my husband for 2 minutes each day because he would rather spend his time gaming than with me. I tried getting into League of Legends because I thought it could bring us closer, but I never liked the game much. Instead, I found myself playing a video game called Genshin Impact, and I actually made some nice friends that way. I enjoyed playing because it felt like I was still getting closer to my husband, since we would basically both be playing video games in the same room on different computers. It really wasn't your picturesque marriage, but I was willing to take what I could get, until someone from my husband's League of Legends team recommended that he start playing Genshin Impact. He started, and, well, the game has a lot of co-player features that make leveling up easier, so I offered to help him out in his world once he had unlocked multiplayer mode. We started playing together pretty clinically at first, with me only helping him with dungeons and stuff, but then, since I was so much stronger and higher level than him, my husband started asking me for actual advice. We still faced opposite walls when we played, but we were finally on the same voice call, and in between spam-killing mini-bosses, we started talking normally to each other about work and life. Since my husband is a natural gamer, this meant that I was having a heart-to-heart with him for hours each day, and while it was a bit of a struggle for me to balance work, game.
What industry secret can you reveal that the public would go crazy about if they knew? In the K-pop industry, you'll often notice that some idols have no stage presence and that their faces are basically blank masks when they perform. They'll smile, frown, and smirk to the music, but there's no real expression in their eyes. Examples of this are Winter from aespa, Doyoung from NCT, and, especially recently, Hanyul from Kiss of Life. Those are just examples of K-celebrities with blank face syndrome, and I'm not saying that their difficulty in expression is attributed to what I'm about to describe next specifically. However, largely, the reason why it's so commonplace to have idols who look like they have one permanent facial expression is due to botched plastic surgeries. Do you really think that, in an industry where idols spend years learning how to sing, dance, and walk, they aren't also taught how to make engaging facial expressions? And do you really think that an agency would want to debut an idol who is incapable of being engaging with the audience and amplifying their stage presence by varying their facial expressions? The dark truth is that when idols have to get so many plastic surgeries, it's only natural that a few of them are going to have negative effects, and this results in a lessened ability to control muscles around the eyes and cheeks, especially as a result of double eyelid surgery, which is one of the most common surgeries in Korea. Agencies do their best not to talk about this, though, because the public is usually critical of any news of plastic surgery on their beloved idols' faces, and hearing that plastic surgery made their idols' faces worse would just cause uproar. However, the next time you're looking at someone with great singing and dancing skill but no ability to properly wink and flirt with their face, spare the idols some sympathy. Usually, it's never their fault. Women, what's that one thing you do to get men's attention that nobody knows? I use it every day after doing my skincare routine, and let me tell you, this never misses. Recently my boyfriend bought me a perfume, attraction in a bottle from a brand called Cute Urges that's now jeopardizing our relationship. He bought it thinking that spraying it on me while we have our sexy, silly time would turn him on a little more because the perfume was listed to have a small increase in pheromones. If it turned him on more, he would be able to, you get the point. God, did it work. I left the bed with my legs shaking, and I dropped to the floor. However, the scientist in me wanted to conduct my own experiment. What if I wore it everywhere? That's exactly what I did. I did my skincare and put some Vaseline on my sensitive points, just a little advice for you guys, and sprayed it there so it would stick there longer and stronger. Then I was off to classes. Do you know those moments in movies where the whole class turns back and looks back at the main character? Imagine that, except it was all the guys in the class. The funniest part is they were already looking at the door before I walked in. It was almost as if they could smell me from a mile away. That's when I needed a second to figure out why this was working so well. I hid in the bathroom and looked more into the perfume's description on cuturges.com, and my boyfriend was dead wrong. It does not do a small increase in pheromones, it's a huge one. I've been toying with all these guys' actual brain chemistry without even knowing. Walking around campus was one of the most embarrassing and best moments of my life somehow. For the first time in my life, I felt like the main character. I had so many people ask me for my snap, and to be honest, a lot of the guys were pretty good looking, but there was no way in hell I was going to cheat on my boyfriend. That's what I thought until I met him. I won't give his real name, so I'll call him Paxton for all my Never Have I Ever fans. Paxton and I got to talking, and he's actually a really nice guy. He owns his own startup company and pulls around 6 figures every month. I told him I had a boyfriend and wasn't interested in the dating realm, but I had no problem being friends. He told me that we weren't going to be friends. I'm supposed to be meeting him at a hotel later this weekend, so we'll see how this goes. It feels so wrong yet so right. My dad threatened me because of my gay haircut. My dad is suffering and takes it out on me. I'm currently living at home but actively searching for a place to live, in secret from my parents. My dad was active duty military but is now in the reserves and guards the gates of our local military base and has some form of PTSD from his active duty years but refuses to admit it or seek help for it, and I am usually the target of his angry outbursts. One morning after I put my sister on the bus, I decided to just chill out for the day before going over to my girlfriend's house that evening because it was my first day off in a while since I worked 2 jobs. My dad was leaving for work, and before he did he told me I needed to get a haircut that day. I told him I can't afford one and I just got one 2 weeks prior, so my hair was still short. He said he didn't care and to just borrow money from your mom or your girlfriend. Just get rid of that gay haircut, no excuses. Then he left. About an hour later I called my mom and let her know what's up. She sighs but doesn't fight it, but I told her to hang on. I called the barber shop I go to and asked if my guy was working that day. He was not. That's an issue because every other barber in the area has either messed up my hair really badly or refuses to touch my hair due to the fact that I'm mixed and have thick curly hair, and they are afraid they will mess it up. So I call my mom back and let her know my guy isn't working today, but I know he will be tomorrow. She says okay and to just go the next day, so we go on with our day. After my mom gets home from work I head out to my girlfriend's house at about 5 p.m. About 15 minutes after I get to her house my mom calls me and says, "Do they have hair clippers there?" Me, "I don't think so." "Why?" "Mom, Pop says if you don't come home with a haircut he's cutting your hair off." My girlfriend overhears this and, having heard what I go through with him all the time, says, "What the hell? No. You're not gonna let him do that to you, that's abusive as hell." "Mom, am I on speakerphone?" Me, "No mom, I'm gonna go, I'm tired of getting yelled at today." I'm dumbfounded at this point but quickly snap out of it, remembering the man I'm dealing with and how common this sort of thing is for him, and look at my girlfriend. Admittedly I looked for clippers in her house, even dog clippers, and when I couldn't find any I got desperate enough to ask her to cut my hair with scissors. I know it sounds ridiculous, but you have to understand how much this man scares me. He and I are of similar heights, but he is much stronger than I am and much more intimidating, and he knows it. He has punched me in the chest before because I wasted his tire shine for his car, and rather than normal punishments, he would have me do military exercises for 4 hours over any little thing. Woke up late? Exercise. Dishes weren't done? Exercise. Wearing clothes I don't like? Exercise. At one point he grabbed me by my collar and held me up against a wall in front of all our family friends because he thought I sided him. But anyway, after I can't find any clippers my girlfriend tells me to stop and relax. She told me not to go home if he's threatening me like that. I told her I didn't have a choice. I had work the next day. My uniform was at home, and since I had started my second job so recently I couldn't call out. After a while of talking we decided to go pick up my clothes for work and to go back to her house since her mom told me I could stay with them for a little while. So I called my mom back and I told her what I was going to do, and she lost it. "Mom, no, come home." Me, "I'm not coming home to be shaved bald." "Mom, please just come home, I'll talk to him." Me, "No, I'm coming to grab my clothes and staying here for the night. Mom, this will only make things worse. Me, I don't feel safe there tonight. Mom, screw you. I get in my car and tell my girlfriend to follow me in hers. At this point it is about 7:45 p.m. As we start driving, my mom calls me back. Mom, please come home. I talked to him and he promised to keep it civil. Me, I'm grabbing my clothes and leaving. Girlfriend is coming with me. Mom, no she's not. Keep her away from my house or I'll call 911. Me, she's here to make me feel safe. Mom, if you think you're leaving in that car you're wrong, that's not your car, that's the car we let you use. Me, okay, girlfriend is in her car, so we'll just take hers back to her house. My mom then starts going on about how this is going to make her have a stroke, if I don't come home she's going to call an ambulance on herself, and that I'm putting her in a really bad position. Unfortunately, I eventually cave and tell her I'm coming home and hang up. I then call my girlfriend who has been driving behind me the whole time and tell her the deal. She tells me not to, but I tell her what my mom said about having a stroke and since she's had them before how it's very likely. She doesn't like the idea, but I tell her to wait at the front of my neighborhood for at least an hour. If she felt like leaving after that then she could, but if I didn't call her at 1 a.m. to tell her I'm okay, to call the police. She agrees and that's what we did. I walk into the house and my mom hugs me while crying. My sister is still confused on what's going on, but after my mom's scene we go into my bathroom and she shapes up my beard a little, the only thing that really needed to be done, and about an hour later my dad gets home. Things didn't remain civil like she said. He started yelling at me about how I never listen, threatens me saying me and him could go outside and fight right now and says he's not afraid of jail time because he's served it before, says he's poured 10 years of his life into me and that he's going to get something out of it, whether it's me getting a good job and supporting myself, or him kicking my ass. He reiterates the fact that he's not my dad and he never will be. He doesn't let me call him dad, he makes me call him Pops. That was the first conversation we had ever had and it was when I was 8. He tells me there's only one man on this house and it's him, so if I want to act like a man to go out into the real world and act like one, and while I was in his house I am to do whatever he says, because even if he asks me to do something, he's not really asking me, he's telling me to do it just in a nicer way. While this is going on my mom doesn't intervene or say anything. He then tells me for my own safety to never yell at his wife ever again. I went downstairs to my room after all this and called my girlfriend to let her know I'm okay. For reference, he started yelling at me at 9:20 and I called her at 11:30. I was standing there getting yelled at for over 2 hours. A few weeks later and I'm still at home. I'm very much looking for a place to live, but I'm stuck here for at least a few more months.
My dog poops and pisses every time I have intimacy. I'm at my wit's end with my dog, my beloved 8-year-old pug. I thought my grandmother's gallbladder was weak until I started having intimacy and my dog was not having it. She is my only dog and I also have 2 cats. I have been with my boyfriend for a year and a half now. Here's the problem that I am embarrassed to seek help for. Every time my boyfriend and I have intimacy, my dog pees and or poops on the floor. Every single time. Without fail. This happens even if she's been walked and all the pee and poo she's got in her is already evacuated. It's like she keeps a spare in the barrel for the occasion or something. It is a fact that my dog is overly attached to me. She is a pug bred for companionship, and she is quite anxious, hyper, and strong-willed in her personality. She sleeps with me, and seems to always plant herself between my boyfriend and I. She and my boyfriend get along fine, but if she had the choice, she'd be glued to me all the time. She is crate trained, but stays in it only during the day when I am at work. She is fine with this. She even runs into it when it's time for me to go, but if I am in the house when she's in her crate, even at night, she will endlessly screech, bark, cry, and dig to get out. So putting her in her crate when we have intimacy doesn't seem like the best solution either. She has lashed out at my boyfriend a few times, especially when I'm still in bed and he's up and he goes to give me a goodbye kiss. She will growl and lunge at him. So I am surmising that this behavior is because of a combination of thinking she owns me, anxiety, and thinking my boyfriend is harming me. We are also usually loud while in the throes of it. There have been a few times where he has playfully spanked me when we're not doing the deed and my dog immediately cowers. My boyfriend bought a new place about 6 months ago. It is carpeted, while I have laminate and tile at my place, therefore the impact of her pooping and peeing is more severe because it is hard to get the smell out. I use the special pet enzyme cleaners on any spots and work diligently to get them all out. Lately, she'll sneak up to his room to do a little pee in his room even after she's been outside. It's as if she's trying to make a statement. I'm thinking I can physically block off his room as a solution to this piece of it, but I have no clue what to do about her peeing and pooping when we have intimacy. This has been going on for a while, and our patience is wearing thin. How in the hell do I handle this? I don't really want to stop in the middle of having intimacy in order to give her positive reinforcement, and if I put her in her crate beforehand, she will raise hell and spoil the mood, so I am absolutely stumped as to what to do. Maybe she just wants to join in. She hasn't gotten much action since she was spayed. My fiancé wants his father to go down on me before we get married. My fiancé proposed to me about 8 months ago. We decided on having a relatively small wedding, which is in 2 days. He seems absolutely perfect and we are very much in love. I have my V card and so does he. He wanted to save it for marriage and I wasn't fussed, so I agreed to save it. He has told me earlier that in his family the father checks the V card of the bride the night before the wedding. I laughed this off as it seriously sounds like a massive joke. But no, turns out he was dead serious. He wants me, the night before, to open my legs up in a small ceremony type thing so his dad can check me while he, his brothers, and his uncle can watch so that they know I am still pure. I told him fat chance I am going to do that, and he was begging to me to go through with it and how important it is for him. He said he knew it was slightly embarrassing for me, but his mom did, and it will prove how much I love him and that I have nothing to hide anyway, as I still have my V card. I left and he was crying like a little baby. It was very dramatic. I want to call off the whole wedding because of this and never talk to him again. But at the same time, it's only one thing, and other than that we are genuinely perfect for each other, and I don't want to spend my life with anyone else, and it is very important to him and his family. I am currently at my friend's house and I might stay here for the night. Tomorrow would be our last day as an unmarried couple and I am straight up panicking. Update: I went and talked to him this morning. I told him that his father is not going to look at me and he needs to respect that. He was adamant that it needs to happen and accused me of lying about my V card. I was trying to be calm and rational, but he was not having it and just became more and more angry. I told him if he really loved me he would stand by me on this and tell his father no, to which he laid hands on me and said he didn't need to prove anything. I ended it right there and left him. My husband attacked me because a coworker talked to me at work. Tell me you have a small PP without telling me you have a small PP. My husband cheated on me for 2 years. However, every time he gets a new friend, he thinks I am into them or sleeping with them. He gave me a concussion because I hugged his friend after helping his wife give birth at home, and his friend was trying to say thank you. I didn't want to hug the guy anyway, but I was being polite and we were in their house. I got a new job at a restaurant, and one of my coworkers is really attention-seeking, and he is dating another girl coworker. We have karaoke nights on the Mondays that I work, and the coworker always comes and sings a lot and is intoxicated. I don't talk to this dude or acknowledge him because my husband thinks he is attention-seeking. I sang a song at karaoke, and my coworker commented on it. Now my husband is mad because he says I don't have boundaries when I ask him to have boundaries with women. His friend was a few hours late to meet up with him the other day. I was home alone and cleaning the house and had music on. My husband called me 10 times and I didn't notice because I was cleaning and didn't have my phone. I also missed a call from my friend. I answered his last call, and he accused me of having his friend over and sleeping with him. We even had a friend who was a homeless meth dude, and the friend talked to me about how he's sleeping with some dude's wife while my husband was right there picking stuff up. He got mad at me for having that conversation, and I agreed that it was inappropriate and won't talk to him by myself anymore. The meth dude made dinner another night and he was being really insecure about his cooking and kept asking if it was okay, so I told him it was great because I honestly wanted him to shut up. I mentioned how my husband makes amazing food. I was punished for a week over this and there was physical violence. Today, we were arguing because the coworker thing happened last night. He wanted to leave, so I tried to get in the car to stop him. He got in the car and told me that he is going to give me a concussion and unalive me. He started attacking me and I saw blood all over us. He tried to choke me to the point I couldn't even make a sound to scream. I opened the car door and screamed for my landlord to help, as she lives right on the property. She helped us calm down and he apologized and says he doesn't like having rules on him. The advice I'm really looking for is, has anyone ever been with someone who is very traumatized? He was a child refugee from Africa. His relationship with his mom is bad and she showed no love. He and his siblings starved so that she could buy gold jewelry and she stole all their money. He was in a relationship with a woman 20 years older than him who has 7 children and is an alcoholic and physically abusive and cheated on him the whole time and severely put him down. I have a lot of empathy for him and have seen him grow a lot and am proud of him for how far he has come, but also some things like his insecurity are not changing fast enough for me to even be or feel safe. I had a hard life. I was assaulted a lot as a child and beat. I have been substance abused and assaulted many times as I got older. I was put in lockdown facilities from 13 to 18 because my parents listened to therapists and thought I was mentally ill. Despite all of these things, I am an extremely positive and optimistic person. I learned how to heal myself, and in the lockdowns, I learned how to find freedom within myself when I had nothing. I have always been psychologically aware and intelligent in the way that I can help people, help myself, and I can understand what is going on in people's hearts. I see the true person that wants to be free in him who is caged by all of his pain, but it has taken a toll on me. His cheating made me lose myself and I was a shell of a human until recently. I have been getting back up on my feet, but I feel like because I have better energy now, men are becoming more attracted to me, and now my husband is starting to become paranoid and insecure again when I have never betrayed him like that, and I never will. But when you're paranoid, everything you see feeds your assumptions. I guess I am just wondering, has anyone been with someone so traumatized and had to be patient for their growth? I can deal with a lot, and I know that humans are complex. I don't expect a perfect person. What's the most messed up thing a parent has said to you that you'll never forget? My mom unveiled my whole life was a lie at a party. Last New Year's Eve, while separating my parents during a domestic dispute, I had put my mom and dad in separate rooms and my mother was starting to argue with me, at which point she drops this bomb: I don't know why you're even defending him, he's not even your real dad. At the ripe, breedable age of 21, I found out I have little to no memory of my biological father, I have no idea about 50% of my medical history, etc. More so the way my mom said it stuck with me. A billion ways to approach that, and you tell me it during a fight? Yes, I sent my dad to the bedroom and had my mom in the living room. She was threatening to leave. In regards to my mom being a crappy person and all that. To shed light on the whole thing, it's a huge mess. Both my parents have years of emotional and psychological baggage that they've ignored for the first 28-ish years of their marriage. Unresolved issues from affairs. I was the result of an affair in response to an affair. Yeah, originally I did take sides, but I've realized there is no sides. It's literally two people feeding off each other and entirely destructive, so they're both wrong. I don't care who is more wrong, they're both wrong and need help. I've told them this, calmly. I accepted pretty quickly that my dad is the one who raised me. As far as my bio dad, whenever I refer to him is that I think of him as a robot. I am contemplating meeting him sometime in the next year. I know his name and where he lives, unsure of how to approach. As for my general well-being, it's forced me to grow up a ton, my parents fighting tears down anything nearby, but I've realized that I'm capable of being independent from them, and I am. 100%. I just quit my second job yesterday, but I've worked 2 jobs for the past year and gone to school full-time, and I live at a distance. Finally, I just need to say this, I love my parents. Sounds insane, and they don't deserve it, but rarely do we as humans deserve something like love. They are flawed, very very flawed, but they are my parents.
My boyfriend is a snob and I can't stand it. I've been dating my boyfriend for 3 years and we moved in together a few months ago. I've never noticed anything wrong with how clean he was before and I was excited to move in. When we first moved in, I worked about 20 hours a week and he worked 30, because I worked less. I was fine with taking care of the house and it was good until I got a new job and now work 50 hours while he works 25 hours now. He never cleans up after himself and I always had to after work. I just got too exhausted working so much and cleaning up after 2 people. He leaves his clothes everywhere, never washes dishes, leaves garbage everywhere, leaves earwax-filled tissue, moldy cups, nail clippings, bags and containers. He's never cleaned the toilet or bathroom and thinks it's fine. He also shaves his beard in the sink and leaves the hair in the sink for days until I finally do it. The list goes on. I have given up on cleaning and asked if he could start doing more since I work more and pay more bills than him anyway. He did for a day and stopped after that. I went away for a week and the house I came back to was worse than ever. We have a fly infestation and silverfish in the bathroom. I was furious and asked if he's used to the flies. He said he's had them a lot and just said he'll buy bug spray, which doesn't fix the actual problem. I'm thinking of moving into my own little studio to have it to myself because I can't stand living here anymore. I don't want to spend my life cleaning up after him. Right now there's 2 full bin bags in the kitchen and all of his dirty dishes everywhere and I'm just too tired to deal with it. I can't even feel comfortable or eat in the house. I'll only grab a sandwich from the store when I go out, but I used to be such a great cook. It was one of my hobbies and I miss it. He sees nothing wrong with any of the mess and I don't know if I'm overreacting.
I'm pregnant and depressed, and my boyfriend won't stop looking at pictures of naked girls. This pregnancy wasn't planned, so it was a surprise for us both, but we are in a loving and committed relationship, so we've been very happy and excited for this new chapter of our lives. He's wanted a baby for a long time. This is both of our first child and our families are extremely supportive and ecstatic of the news. I have been dealing with prenatal depression lately. I'm unable to sleep, panic attacks for the first time in my life, crying for no reason, and just an overall sense of sadness and pain in my heart. There are of course tons of things that go through my mind, such as, am I going to be a good mother? I've never been the type of person who thought I was born to be a mom. Are we going to get through this pandemic unscathed? Since it was an unplanned pregnancy, I wonder if this is even what we want. Will we be okay financially? Etc. etc. I've always been a slim and pretty girl who gets lots of attention from people, and due to this pregnancy, I've only recently realized that my self-esteem and confidence was largely based on how I feel about my looks. I've always been very confident and had high self-esteem, but now that my body is starting to change and due to the depression, I've been feeling ugly and obese, and it's been an internal struggle that I've been dealing with. I feel very vain saying this, but I'm actually less afraid of the labor and more afraid of the fact that my body is going to be permanently stretched out. I'm dealing with a very shallow and vain identity crisis, which also makes me feel so guilty for the baby, and I'm upset that I'm even having these thoughts, but I can't help the way I feel. I have been vocal with my depression and the thoughts I've been having, and my boyfriend has been so supportive and loving every step of the way. My boyfriend is very active on Instagram and he follows lots of model-type girls. This isn't a secret and it's something I've known since before we started dating, but yesterday I found out that he has lots of these girls' pictures, screenshots of stories, etc., and it sent me into a spiral of how ugly I feel and how I'll never be good enough for him. Although it wasn't a surprise he had these pictures, it still made me so sad, hurt, and disappointed. I largely equated Insta girls to adult content, which I'm okay with, but a lot of the girls he follows are from the city we live in, which feels a little too close to home. When I found out about the pictures, we had a big argument about this, and he reassured me that I'm the only one he wants to be with and that the baby and I are the only thing that matters in his life. He said that the pictures were either sent to him by friends or he'll send them out to his friends, but that's just what guys do and that it doesn't mean anything. He's very secretive of his phone, and when I asked to see his phone he refused, saying that as long as I trust him and he's not cheating, it shouldn't matter what he does and that the same rule applies to me as well. Last night we ended the talk on a good note with him telling me what a wonderful life we're going to have, how much he loves me no matter how I look, and how excited he is of what's ahead of us. It's the morning now and he's still sleeping, but I still feel so awful and sad about the fact that I'm never going to feel like I'm good enough for him and that I'll be left with a destroyed body to have a baby that wasn't even planned to begin with. I feel helpless as there is nothing I can do except deal with my emotions, because who am I to restrict how he uses his phone and what he looks at? He's an adult, and even if I told him not to look at girls, I can't control that, and it's easy enough to have burner accounts to hide this from me anyway. I feel so hurt and heartbroken by it all. I know that if I was doing anything that upset him the way this upsets me, I would stop doing whatever it is. Immediately. But he says that since we love and trust each other, we shouldn't have to restrict what the other person does, which I mostly agree with. But the pain won't go away and I'm at an all-time low with my self-esteem. I have no more tears left to cry. I feel empty but also full of pain at the same time.
My girlfriend's friend wants her to open our relationship so he can get with her. I've been with my girlfriend Emily for 4 years now. Emily has a close friend Jeff who I have never liked. The guy has always come off as skeevy, whiny, and creepy to me. I've heard things about him from ex-friends, and even current ones, that make him just come off as pathetic and creepy. I could go on about it, but I'll cut to the chase. The real reason I do not like Jeff is that he has always been interested in Emily. They met in middle school and he's had a crush on her since then. He's tried and failed multiple times over the years to get her to like him. Ever since I came into her life, and we started dating, he's always given me the feeling that he's orbiting, waiting for us to break up to try again. He's backed off romantically though and hasn't tried anything for the 4 years we've been together. Jeff has been a sore topic for me and Emily. Even though I don't like him, she and her friends do. I've made it clear to her that I don't like him, but I've never interfered with her friendship with him because I've always trusted her when she tells me she feels nothing romantically for him. This all changed last week. Jeff's own romantic life can only be described as unusual. From what I know, mostly one-night stands and third-wheel scenarios. He's openly poly and I've heard far too much about it from him. Not the lifestyle for me, but whatever suits you. What got to me though, was how he would talk about it to the people in monogamous relationships in his friend group. Pitching it as if he was trying to sell them on it for other reasons. Last week, Emily and I tagged along with her friends for an outing. We ended up at a dive late at night for drinks and Jeff tagged along with the two of us. He was incredibly off-putting to me the entire night, much more than usual. Acting all buddy-buddy with me to an uncomfortable degree. As we sat and chatted, he brought up his most recent relationship from a few months back. A poly relationship where he was third-wheeling another couple. It was very awkward. Much more so when out of nowhere he recommended we try something like that ourselves. The short of it is he asked us to open our relationship and become a triad with him. He knows I'm straight, so what he really meant was he wants to get with Emily and for me to be okay with it. Emily declined, and I wanted to tear into the creep. However, Emily made me go to her car so she could pay for our drinks and leave knowing I was about to make a scene. Suffice it to say, I am not comfortable with her continuing to associate with him. I've made it clear that what he did was completely disrespectful of our relationship and that I don't trust him not to do something more sinister at this point. Emily, however, disagrees. She's saying this is just how Jeff operates, which makes me even more uncomfortable with the situation. He's not neurotypical, and her whole friend group has used it as an excuse for so long. I'm sick of hearing it. We have been arguing nonstop about this now. She doesn't think this is enough of a reason to cut him off and I cannot understand why. Her friend group has essentially decided to stay out of it as well. I did share my thoughts with someone I know who is an ex-friend of Jeff's from high school. I also learned that Jeff has tried to break up Emily and her boyfriends before, and he thinks this is another attempt. She was planning on going out Friday with friends to a movie, which included Jeff. We ended up having another massive argument in which I told her to not come back if she left. She's been staying at her parents' house since. Emily refuses to tell me what about Jeff is so important and endearing he's worth this. It's like to her this is just normal or something. How do I even proceed at this point? It feels like I'm just being walked over. What's the most effed up thing you've ever walked in on? My dad passed out with a needle in his arm and a naked prostitute sucking his flaccid pee-pee. Rough stuff at 9 years old. At least I know mine's bigger. I walked into an unlocked bathroom stall only to find a completely naked fat kid, around 10 to 12 years old, standing on the rim of the toilet while squatting to take a poop. It was the absolute worst timing as I saw the stool exit his smooth marble sculptures. He immediately began screaming profanities at me as if I'm the dumb SS who was butt naked in a public toilet and forgot to lock the door. I've tried, but it can't be unseen. He wasn't even Asian. Sometimes you take a poop that's so big you work up a sweat. Clearly this kid had ascended past this point into a higher plane of being. Clothes no longer mattered to him. My mom, who was 68 at the time, was in bed having intimacy with her boyfriend, whom I had not yet been told about. Bleach was needed. 68 really leads to 69. I went bar hopping with some friends a while ago and one of the girls in our group had a habit of running off when she got intoxicated and getting into trouble. As soon as we realized she was gone, everyone split up to look for her. I went to check the restrooms. The bar that we were in had one restroom for both guys and girls but multiple stalls. I find a stall with the door slightly open and hear weird noises from inside. Figured she must be puking in there so I barge in. It wasn't her, it was actually 3 guys in a pseudo-human centipede threesome. I was so stunned that I stood there for a solid 10 seconds and they told me to join. I backed out slowly, had a cigarette, and called it a night. I can't tell you the logistics of 3 grown damn men clapping cheeks in a stall, seeing as I barely understand it myself. Teachers, what is the most badass response you've ever heard from a student? I had a student that came back a couple of weeks out of class. The counselor let the teachers know that his father had passed and he was having a rough time. I pulled him aside after class one day, Told him not to worry about any of the work he missed, focus on getting caught up in your other classes, I'll make things work out here. I was his 10th grade English teacher, we had already taken the end of year exam, as far as the state was concerned he was done, and that was good enough for me. The kid was straight A's until his dad passed. Cut to a few weeks later, I'm called into the counselor's office for a meeting with the student's other teachers. I double check and he's been doing great in class, and work I've assigned has been turned in on time, even though I told him he didn't have to, so I have no idea what's going on. Come to find out his other teachers weren't as lenient on the makeup work as I was. He had gotten behind in all his other classes and had stayed behind, now he was in danger of failing everything but my class, he'd have to repeat the year save for English. Counselor asks me what I did to help the student. Oh, well I told him not to worry about anything he missed, and that as far as I was concerned he was already caught up and he could do his best in class going forward. One of the other teachers balked. I don't see why we needed Mr. My last name's input, he just let the kid skip out on work. That's not helpful. I replied, the kid's dad just effing died, you really think the last 6 weeks worth of history matters to him in the slightest? The counselor smiled and pointed at me. I invited Mr. My last name because I knew he would say some things I'm not allowed to say. Just as the counselor finished, then the student, Andrew, walked in with a huge pile of papers, which were his works, and threw it on the counselor's desk and then looked at all the teachers dead in the eyes and said, I hope all of you cocksuckers stay broke and lifeless, and then you can watch me become the world kickboxing champion and millionaire, and at that point we will see who is laughing. He left the room and later we found out that his family was moving to England. Entitled woman let her dog shit on the airport floor. So I shit on her travel plans. While walking to my gate at LAX I noticed a woman whose dog was in the middle of doing its business. The woman was loudly FaceTiming with her back to the dog, so I assumed she didn't notice. That was likely the thought shared by the gentleman who tried to get her attention. Excuse me, miss? He said, in a polite tone. The woman glared at him. Your dog, he sheepishly continued, pointing to the mid-poop pup. The woman rolled her eyes and went back to FaceTime as the man slinked away, seemingly embarrassed. Some people, she bellowed to her FaceTime companion with no hint of irony, are just so damned rude. When her dog finished, the woman started walking away, leaving everything right on the airport floor. Another woman tried to stop her. You're not going to clean that up? She asked, as shocked as the rest of us were. They have people for that, the offender replied, disappearing into the crowd, as much as someone yelling into their phone can disappear into a crowd. I stood near the pile and warned people to walk around it while someone else got a maintenance worker's attention. No one said anything, we were so shocked that anyone could be that horrible. When I got to my gate, the woman was there, too. Great, we were both going to Tokyo. When I travel abroad, I get embarrassed by other Americans doing things 100 times less embarrassing than leaving animal feces on the floor of an airport. To make it worse, her dog was now barking at everyone who walked by. I have nothing against people flying with their dogs, I do it often. But it is a privilege I take seriously. My dog is well trained and behaves better than most people. He certainly behaves better than that asshole. Speaking of assholes, there is a pet relief area inside LAX Pass security, just 2 gates away from where the party pooper let her dog go to town. It didn't matter, she was the type of person to litter 3 feet from an empty garbage can. While her dog barked at the world, the woman had moved from FaceTiming with no headphones to listening to music with no headphones. I don't like to throw around the word sociopath, but I don't know how else I could explain just how selfish and terrible of a person she was. I bet her car was somewhere in long-term parking, parked across 3 spots with paint on the bumper from the child's bike she hit without leaving a note. Everyone else tried to ignore her, sitting as far away from her as they could. I am not everyone else. I sat down right next to the horrible woman. Are you going to London on business? I said. I'm going to Tokyo, she responded gruffly, annoyed that I interrupted her DJing. Oh, I said. Then you better hurry. That flight got moved to gate 53C. This is the flight to London. I figured I could give her a little moment of panic as payback for how terribly she was treating everyone. I didn't predict what would happen next. She grabbed her bags and her dog in a huff, and stormed out of the gate without even checking. She was so self-involved, she didn't notice that the monitor at our gate still said Tokyo and almost everyone at the gate was Japanese. Based on her actions, she believed me that the fight had been moved, so she's also an asshole for not thanking me. Some people, I thought as I watched her rush away from the gate without stopping her, are just so damned rude. The flight to Tokyo was at gate 69A, so the 53 gates were on the other side of the next terminal. And I felt guilty knowing she probably berated some poor clerk who had to explain to her that there was no gate 53C. I don't know if she made it back to this flight before we took off or not, but I didn't see her board and I don't hear her dog. Her missing her flight was not my original intention, but it would be a fine punishment for her being so rude to everyone and making a low-paid stranger clean feces off the floor. What makes me wonder if I went too far is the knowledge that Delta only has 1 flight to Tokyo each day. Whoops. Maybe she can rebook on another airline. I hear they have people for that. Divorcing my husband was the biggest mistake of my life. If I could give anyone a piece of advice for divorce, it would be to not do it under normal circumstances. If your spouse is beating you or threatening you or your children, then of course get out and fast. In my case there was no abuse. We were together for 8 years, that was mostly good, and we have 4 kids. Right around 5 years I got a promotion at work and I got it in my head that my ex-husband was dragging me down, or at least holding me back from more success and a better life. We never had a lot of money, but with my promotion I was now making more than he was. I started working longer hours and at the same time his hours were cut, so he was at home more. I really began to resent him because he was home and because he got to spend time with our kids. Most nights when I got home they were already getting ready for bed if not already sleeping. After a few months of my new job it was clear to me that things were not going well at home without me there. Some nights the dishes weren't done when I got home or the kids had not eaten or whatever else I could think of to be mad at him about. It really didn't matter. He kept saying that he would try harder but that it was hard being home all the time. That always made me really mad. For the next couple years things kept getting worse. My hours weren't any shorter and he was on and off full time. There was no convenient time for him to be working full time because of my hours, but we also needed the money. Whenever he would tell me that he could get extra hours I would always complain, and the less hours he worked the more I complained that he wasn't bringing in enough money. Whenever he brought up the contradiction I would tell him that he needed to figure it out. I knew that it would bother him so I started saying that a lot and for everything that I could. I really started to resent him and I pulled away from him. I knew that it was hurting him but I didn't care. If he didn't want to be hurt then he would at least try to make me happy. I used that same thing to justify when I started to talk to another guy at work. I thought he was just a friend but talking at work turned into texting at home and then pictures and videos and then trying to sneak some alone time with him. I knew that it was wrong but it made me feel so alive, and my husband had not made me feel like that in years. I was tired of being unhappy and I was doing this for me. The worst was the night that I came home at a reasonable time and found that he had cleaned the whole house, cooked the whole family dinner and picked out a movie for all of us to watch together. This would have made me swoon a couple years earlier, but that night I couldn't even look at him and I pretended to be sick. I spent the rest of the night in bed while he waited on me and checked on me and even made me different food and brought it to me in bed. It made me feel terrible, and then it made me angry that he made me feel that way, and by the end of the night I was texting with the other guy. Over the next month or two from that night it did not matter what he did. He was wrong just for breathing most days. He would get so upset with how I was treating him and I would just wait and egg him on into losing it because I knew it would happen eventually. After most of the fights we had he would apologize for whatever I told him he did wrong if there even was something, but I never did. I would usually find a way to make him feel even worse. I knew that I was right because he was wrong and that was all that mattered to me. I even pretended that I didn't care when he found out about my relationship with the guy from work. It really destroyed me inside to see him holding back tears, but I wasn't going to let him see that. He was at his weakest and that was when I chose to tell him that I wanted a divorce. I could almost hear his heart shattering inside his chest. He talked and fought and said that we could work through it together. I really wasn't interested in fixing our marriage, but I mostly ended things with the other guy but only because I knew I could get it back if I wanted it. I could see that he was trying and occasionally I would let him know, but for the most part I kept being a huge bitch to him for any and all reasons that I could think of. I'm not sure how much more the man could have done to make me happy besides finding a job that paid enough for me to not have to work at all. He said that he was looking, but looking and finding are two different things. It was around this time that I discovered this group and a few others. I started posting things about him, from my perspective only, and I got so much positive feedback for how I was feeling that I knew I was right. The more I posted the more validation that I got. It wasn't just me who knew that my ex-husband wasn't worth keeping around. I had the whole internet telling me how terrible he is. I started saying awful things to him and even outright ignoring him. I was so confident with mine and everyone else's opinion that I contacted a lawyer and within a couple weeks had filed for divorce. I continued to use this site and a couple others to validate my feelings and for encouragement to go through with it, and finally it was done. It went pretty smoothly. My ex-husband didn't ask for much besides to not get divorced and to try to work it all out. I didn't care about that though. He was broken, but I was free. I could do whatever I wanted without having to feel any guilt or answer to anybody. It was an amazing feeling of freedom. It didn't last long though. In the first month after he moved out I missed garbage day 3 times. There was also rarely a single clean dish and the laundry sat in piles so long that I had to start doing the sniff test to see if it could be worn again. I also never saw my kids more miserable. My oldest had seen some of the messages from the other guy months earlier and she knew that ex-husband still wanted to try to work it out. It didn't take her long to stop talking to me at all except to say that she wanted to go to ex-husband's house. The others all told me that they wanted to live with their ex-husband too. I did my best to try to make them happy, but I ended up just buying them toys all the time and the happiness only lasted minutes. I also was having a lot of trouble with work. Being alone I couldn't work all those extra hours that I was expected to. I finally gave in and started calling ex-husband to watch the kids. He would always come over as soon as he could and he always asked me if I needed anything. When I would get home I would find clean dishes and laundry and even dinner sometimes. He would never say too much after I got home. He would just say to call him if I needed anything and leave. One night he took out the garbage and brought it to the curb because it was garbage night and I forgot again. He always looked so sad when it was time to go. Finally after a couple months my friends convinced me to go out on a date. It was for dinner and a movie and I was excited and hopeful, but at dinner I started getting a feeling of overwhelming guilt. It got so bad that I ended up not even going to the movie. A week and about a million years later I was on a therapist's couch. I told her everything that had happened starting with the promotion that I got at work. She did not agree with me or with any of the encouragement to divorce that I got. I ended up in her office 2 and sometimes 3 times a week, and the more that I talked to prove that I was right, the more that I started to see how wrong I was. It was truly heartbreaking. I don't know if I cried as much in my whole life as I did in the first month in her office. After about $2,000 of therapy sessions I learned that my ex-husband had his faults, but I figured out that mine were so much worse. I did so many awful things and said awful things that I wouldn't want to be with me, but he did. I still remember him asking me in the meeting with the lawyer to please not go through with it. I did go through with it though, and then later I bragged on here how great it felt. I was so wrong, and now I can see it. A couple weeks ago I went outside with him when he was leaving the house. I asked him about getting back together. When he looked at me, his eyes were full of tears and a couple went down his cheeks. He told me that he didn't know if he could. He said that the pain has been too much for too long and that if we got back together that I might just turn around and do it to him again. He said that he always thought that I would realize how much he loved me and stop until I signed the divorce papers, and let out a big over-exaggerated sigh of relief. He said that hurt him more than anything else and that he doesn't know if he can ever trust me again. I don't blame him. I destroyed a man who, looking back, was a great husband. I deprived my kids of having a great father in the house with them, and I took his kids away from him. And I, the one who pushed for the divorce expecting happiness and a life of freedom, spend all my free time sitting at home or sitting on a therapist's couch. What was the moment you realized you were ugly? This is how I realized one of my kids got my unfortunate genetics. I was not the best looking guy when I was younger. Short, skinny as hell. I had thin, greasy, mouse brown hair. I have a big nose and crooked teeth. I also developed cystic acne at the age of 9. I learned to dress better and care for my hair as I got older. Things that I could change, I did. I grew my hair and learned how to wash and care for it. Slowly as I got older, I got a lot more confident. I realized that crooked teeth and acne scars didn't matter. I learned how to flirt. I learned how to appreciate myself, even though I'm a 5 in straight looks, if we're being honest. But I had a daughter. And sadly for her, she had my nose. And my skin. And my hair. And even more unfortunately, she has her father's big ears and even crooked teeth. I think she's beautiful when I look at her in a certain way. Because, unlike me, no one had ever told her she was ugly. No one ever made her feel bad about herself. But I know she isn't on their level when I see her next to her pretty friends. She'll always have to be the funny and outgoing friend. Do I feel guilty? Sometimes I do. I wish she had gotten my ears and figure in her dad's jaw and eyes. And I know that she'll grow into herself like I did. She's not ugly. She's more unfortunate looking. And our son? He's almost angelic looking. Beautiful in every way and could grow up to be a model. Special shout out to that one guy that called me fat and ugly, you see NT. Appreciate myself, even though I'm a 5 in straight looks, if we're being honest. But I had a daughter. And sadly for her, she had my nose. And my skin. And my hair. And even more unfortunately, she has her father's big ears and even crooked teeth. I think she's beautiful when I look at her in a certain way. Because, unlike me, no one had ever told her she was ugly. No one ever made her feel bad about herself. Confidence isn't something she has to learn, it seems to be innate to her. She's lucky for that. But I know she isn't on their level when I see her next to her pretty friends. She will never be an adorable friend. She'll always be the funny and outgoing one. Do I feel guilty? Sometimes I do. I wish she had gotten my ears and figure in her dad's jaw and eyes. But no one can predict what your kids will look like. And I know that she'll grow into herself like I did. She's not ugly. She's more unfortunate looking. And our son? He's almost angelic looking. Beautiful in every way. Life is unfair like that. He's shy and bookish and could grow up to be a model. Edit, for everyone saying get her braces, yes, I know. She's on the list for braces next year once she's got all her baby teeth out. Also, I am her mom, not her dad. Special shout out to that one guy that called me fat, shine on you, crazy diamond. I just learned my married, dead best friend was in love for years with my wife. A few months ago, my close friend Johnny passed away due to heart problems. His wife was devastated and decided to move away immediately because she couldn't stand to be in that house anymore. She asked me to pack up his things, and I agreed to help because Johnny was my best friend and I was looking forward to getting to hang out in his room one last time. While going through his stuff, I found some old boxes in the basement. Curiosity got the best of me, and I peeked inside one of them. It had pictures of us from way back when we were kids up to when my wife and I got married. It made me feel nostalgic, so I flipped through the box. Then, I realized that there was actually a smaller box hidden inside the bigger box. This smaller box was in way better condition, so I thought it might have something important. Again, this box was filled with pictures, but all of these were of my wife and Johnny hanging out together. There were even some recent ones from family events, like my wife's birthday party. I then found at the bottom letters Johnny wrote to my wife but never sent. The first one dated from before I met her, and the last one was from her recent birthday party. I didn't read a single letter, but all of them were unsent. They weren't signed with Johnny's name on the bottom right portion of the envelope, but simply with anonymous and a heart. It's pretty obvious what the content of the letters is, but I feel like it's not my secret to reveal, so I'll keep his box safe and won't say anything about it. I don't know whether I should be touched or sad. It's so weird to lose a best friend, but arguably weirder to discover that he's been writing love letters to your wife, while married. How did you accidentally become the hero in someone's story? My friends and I were smoking when we decided to go out for a walk on the beach. So, we were walking on the beach, still smoking and getting higher. Suddenly, we see several cop cars and sirens go by. We freaked a little, but they disappeared, so we were chill. 5-ish minutes later, we end up at the main beach street, where we see some cops having pulled over a car. We're curious to see what's happening, so we get closer, but not too tight. We didn't want to get in trouble for public intoxication. However, as we get closer, I realize the couple the cops pulled over was a black man and woman, and I hear them answering the cops' questions with confusion. I hear something like, "We got a report of some black people making a disturbance at a bar," from one of the cops. The black man responds that they haven't been near a bar tonight. At this point, several thoughts happened in my high brain, the most important being that I had to be there for this couple in record, especially considering the ton of police brutality in recent news. So, I walk up to the cops and couple and start recording with my phone. I didn't say anything at first because I didn't know what to say, nor was I sure I could give it a chance. Then, as the cops tell the man and woman to sit on the curb while they check out their car, the woman notices me and the phone and thanks me for being there. I'm trying hard to form words and coherent thoughts, and I say, no problem. Then, it's silent as the couple sit on the curb, and the cops start roaming through their car. Being high, I begin to feel a weird mixture of paranoia and social awkwardness, and I feel that it's been ages since anyone has talked, and I think I need to do something to ease the tension. Then, I open my mouth. So, I begin, then take a big breath that allows the rest of my words to stumble together in such a way that surprises everyone and makes them aware I'm not sober. Have all of you heard about the astronauts up in space? It's wild that people I know have built the systems in place and technology to allow people to go to space. It makes you wonder how great the universe is and how we all need to be there for each other. They all look at me. The woman looked like she instantly regretted thanking me, probably wondering what lunatic would try and start a conversation like that in a situation as it was while being very obviously not sober. Then, the man saves the day and starts joining my discussion, and we find out we're both from South LA, and a real conversation starts. Then, the cop asks if I can stop recording because he has a camera on him, and it's not necessary. But I persist. He gets defensive. The woman tries to defend me. Then they get into a heated argument. I, again, feel extreme social awkwardness and start talking. We all live in this world, and it's hard no matter what. We just all need to be here for each other. We all have our own families and shit we deal with. And I want you to know I'm here for you. You know, in this world, we only have each other. We can't let one another down. The cop and the woman look at me, this time in disbelief and relief. And the cop starts agreeing. And the woman starts settling. And then, they both apologize to one another for the tense situation and shake hands. It was effing ridiculous. The cops end up admitting they had the wrong people, even though they may have jumped the gun, stopped them, and let them go. I stop recording after the cops pull away and the coupe leaves, and I head back to where my friends are waiting. And I believe that I saved the couple and that, just maybe, I had some unknown superpower that could erase racism and solve conflicts. Until I once again became sober and realized the world sucks, but if you ever want to ease a tense situation, just make a fool out of yourself. It'll confuse everyone else enough to get them to band together to deal with your weird lunatic shit.